In 1964, a 17-year-old named Randy Gardner stayed awake for 11 days and 25 minutes as a science experiment. By day 4, he couldn't watch television because he couldn't follow a plot. By day 6, he couldn't remember his own name. By day 9, he was hallucinating that he was a famous Black American footballer. He survived. Most people don't know that the only people who have ever lost the ability to sleep permanently all died within 18 months. Every single one of them. Tonight, humanity loses the ability to sleep. And what happens next will surprise you more than the dying. Sleep is not rest. This is the first and most important thing to understand. When you sleep, your brain is not powering down. It is running one of the most complex biological maintenance programs in nature. During sleep, your brain flushes toxic waste products through the glymphatic system, a network of channels that only opens fully during sleep. The amyloid plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease are among the waste products cleared during sleep. Your immune system produces 70% of its cytokines, the proteins that fight infection and inflammation, during sleep. Your memories are consolidated. Your emotional responses are recalibrated. Your hormones are regulated. Your cardiovascular system recovers from the day's stress. Sleep is not a break from living. It is the maintenance that makes living possible. The moment humanity loses the ability to sleep, the first effects are invisible. Nothing looks different. People lie down at their normal time and simply don't lose consciousness. They get up after 8 hours of lying in the dark, feeling exactly as tired as when they lay down. Day 1 of no sleep feels like a bad night's rest, uncomfortable but manageable. Most people have experienced one bad night. They go to work, they drink more coffee, they complain. They assume it will pass, it will not pass. And the coffee is already doing significantly less than they think. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors, the brain chemical that signals sleep pressure. When those receptors are blocked, the adenosine keeps accumulating. The debt is not canceled, it is deferred. Day 2. The cognitive effects begin to show measurably. Reaction time at 48 hours without sleep is equivalent to a blood alcohol level of 0.1%. Legally drunk in every jurisdiction in the world. Every person on Earth is now legally drunk at the wheel of their car, at the controls of their aircraft, at the keyboard entering medication dosages in hospitals, at the switches controlling nuclear power plants. The accident rate begins climbing on day 2, not because people are making obviously bad decisions. They feel functional, which is itself a symptom of sleep deprivation, the reduced capacity to accurately assess your own reduced capacity. The most dangerous thing about being sleep-deprived is that you don't know how sleep-deprived you are. Day 3. Emotional regulation collapses. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational decision-making, impulse control, and emotional regulation, begins losing connectivity with the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm system. Normally, the prefrontal cortex acts as a brake on the amygdala's responses. After 72 hours without sleep, that brake stops working. People become emotionally volatile in ways they cannot control and cannot accurately perceive. Arguments that would normally resolve in minutes escalate to violence. Workplace conflicts that would normally be navigated professionally explode into confrontations. Families that function normally under stress begin fracturing. The global divorce rate, workplace violence rate, and interpersonal conflict rate all begin measurably increasing on day 3. Not because anything external has changed, but because every human brain on Earth has lost its emotional regulator simultaneously. Day 4. The hallucinations begin. This is the moment Randy Gardner experienced in 1964, and it is the moment that arrives globally on day 4. Visual hallucinations, seeing things that aren't there, begin at the edges of perception first. Shadows move wrong. Peripheral vision produces shapes that aren't present. Text seems to shift. By day 4, these hallucinations are present in approximately 60% of the population, and they are indistinguishable from reality to the person experiencing them. A surgeon who is hallucinating cannot know they are hallucinating. A pilot who sees an instrument reading that isn't there cannot know the reading isn't there. A parent who hallucinates a threat to their child cannot know the threat isn't real. The global accident rate that began climbing on day 2 accelerates sharply on day 4. Day 5. The immune system collapses. The cytokines that the immune system produces during sleep, the proteins that fight infection and regulate inflammation, have not been produced for 5 days. The immune suppression after 5 days of no sleep is equivalent to being on immunosuppressant medication. Every infection that your immune system was managing quietly, the bacteria present in everyone's body that the immune system normally contains, begins spreading. Hospital admissions for infections that should be minor begin increasing. Wounds that should heal begin becoming septic. The global burden of infectious disease, which was already significant before day 1, begins increasing measurably on day 5 as 8 billion immune systems simultaneously fail to produce their defensive proteins. Day 7, 1 week without sleep. The scientific literature on sleep deprivation becomes unhelpful here because no human has been scientifically studied beyond 11 days, and no study has ever been conducted on populations rather than individuals. What the animal research tells us, and sleep deprivation research in rats is extensive, is that total sleep deprivation kills rats in 2-3 weeks through a mechanism that isn't fully understood but appears to involve the breakdown of the gut barrier, bacterial translocation from the gut into the bloodstream, and subsequent sepsis. Whether the mechanism is identical in humans is unknown. What is known is that on day 7, every human body on Earth is running systems that were designed to be maintained during sleep with no maintenance having occurred for a week. The brain's waste clearance system has not cleared waste for 7 days. The amyloid plaques are accumulating. The inflammatory markers are elevated. The cardiovascular system, that should have had 7 nights of reduced heart rate and blood pressure recovery, has had none. Day 7 also reveals the unexpected social transformation that nobody predicted. Human beings deprived of sleep at the individual level become irritable, impulsive, and socially withdrawn. Human beings deprived of sleep collectively, all of them, simultaneously, with the knowledge that everyone else is experiencing the same thing, behave differently than the individual sleep deprivation literature predicted. There is a strange solidarity in shared suffering at civilizational scale. The barriers that normally separate people, social class, nationality, political affiliation, become less significant when everyone is equally exhausted and equally frightened. Neighbors who never spoke begin talking. Communities that were fragmented begin organizing, not everywhere and not uniformly. The violence and conflict that emotional dysregulation produced on days 3 and 4 continues. But alongside the conflict, there is also unexpected connection. Day 10. The neurological deterioration is visible and accelerating. The brain's glymphatic system has not cleared waste for 10 days. The accumulation of metabolic byproducts in brain tissue is producing symptoms that look, from the outside, like rapid onset dementia, confusion, memory failure, personality changes, loss of executive function. The people most severely affected are those who were already carrying higher baseline levels of neurological stress. The elderly, those with pre-existing neurological conditions, those under extreme psychological stress. But the effects are present in everyone. The average human cognitive function on day 10 is estimated, based on extrapolation from shorter sleep deprivation studies, to be operating at approximately 40% of baseline capacity. The civilization that built nuclear reactors, global supply chains, and artificial intelligence is now being run by brains operating at 40%. Day 10 also brings the question that nobody has an answer for. What do you do with nights? The biological drive to sleep, the accumulating adenosine, the circadian pressure, is still present even though sleep itself is impossible. Every night, 8 billion people lie in the dark, exhausted beyond anything they have experienced, unable to lose consciousness, feeling the pressure of sleep without the release of it. The nights become the worst part. The days that have activity, distraction, community, purpose. The nights are 8 hours of enforced wakefulness in the dark with nothing to do but feel the accumulating weight of every previous sleepless night, and the growing certainty that this is not going to end. Day 14, 2 weeks. The fatal familial insomnia cases, the rare genetic condition where people lose the ability to sleep and die within 18 months, offer the only human data point for permanent sleeplessness. Those patients showed a consistent progression: insomnia and panic attacks in the first phase, hallucinations and rapid weight loss in the second, complete loss of sleep and dementia in the third, and death in the fourth. The timeline for fatal familial insomnia patients averaged 18 months from onset to death. Global no sleep has been running for 2 weeks. The question every neurologist on Earth is asking on day 14 is whether the timeline compresses when it happens simultaneously to everyone, or whether individual variation means some people survive longer. The answer is not yet known because it has never happened before, and the scientists trying to answer it are themselves operating at 40% cognitive capacity. Day 20, the surprising survivors emerge. Not survivors in the sense of people who are thriving. Nobody is thriving. Survivors in the sense of people who are functioning significantly better than the average. They fall into unexpected categories. People with certain meditative practices, experienced meditators who can achieve deep states of mental rest without losing consciousness, are showing significantly better cognitive function than the general population. Their brains, trained to achieve theta wave states during waking meditation, appear to be accessing some fraction of the restorative function that normally requires sleep. Not enough to prevent deterioration, enough to slow it. The most experienced meditators on Earth, monks in monasteries, contemplatives in retreat centers, become the most cognitively intact humans alive on day 20. Day 20 also brings the discovery that changes everything. A research team in Seoul, working at severely reduced capacity, on their 20th sleepless day, making mistakes they would never have made before, identifies a compound that can artificially trigger the glymphatic clearance that normally happens during sleep. It doesn't induce sleep. It replicates one specific function of sleep, the waste clearance, while the person remains awake. It doesn't solve the problem. Sleep deprivation kills through multiple mechanisms simultaneously, and addressing one mechanism while the others continue is not a cure. But it slows the deterioration. It buys time. It is the most important scientific discovery in human history, and it is made by a team of scientists who can barely remember their own names. Day 30. The global death toll from 30 days of no sleep is impossible to calculate with precision because the causes of death are so varied. Accidents, violence, infection, cardiovascular failure, neurological collapse, and the record-keeping infrastructure that would normally track them is being operated by severely compromised minds. The estimate that eventually emerges, months later after partial recovery, is between 15 and 40 million deaths globally in the first 30 days. The range is wide because the uncertainty is genuine. What is not uncertain is the direction. Every human being who survives day 30 is cognitively, physically, and neurologically worse than they were on day 0. Some of the damage is reversible with restoration of sleep. Some of it, particularly the neurological accumulation of 30 days of uncleaned waste, is not. The question that sits at the end of 30 days without sleep is not about sleep at all. It is about what sleep reveals about consciousness itself. We spend 1/3 of our lives unconscious. We have always known this. We have never fully reckoned with what it means, that the biological machine running human civilization requires 8 hours of unconsciousness per day to function. That the consciousness we spend our waking hours building and protecting and expressing requires regular dissolution to survive. That the self that feels continuous and permanent is actually rebuilt from scratch every single morning after hours of not existing in any meaningful sense. Sleep deprivation doesn't just kill the body. It reveals that the mind was never as continuous, as stable, or as in control as it believed itself to be. The most frightening thing about 30 days without sleep is not the dying. It is the clarity, arriving too late and at too great a cost, about what we were when we were asleep and what we lost when we stopped. Subscribe, because the next scenario is one you'll think about every time you close your eyes.